Qin had once speculated whether other people would also have a countdown on their arms. It was precisely because of this guess that he had been so cautious about taking the subway to a distant place to verify some things, lest he be tracked down by others later. However, a series of unexpected events had almost made him forget this guess. Now it seems that his guess has become reality. The number of people who have traveled from Earth to this world must be considerable, with 2 in this prison alone, let alone the world outside the prison. How many travelers are there? Hundreds? Thousands? Why did they travel? Qin was not sure. This new guy is interesting, I'm afraid he's a fool, someone said with a laugh, looking at the young man who was breaking down. I heard he was sentenced to 7 years for tax evasion. He didn't cry when he was brought in yesterday, but he's crying now. Anyone who dares to provoke the tax collection agency these days is either a fool or... Qin looked in the direction of the voice. It was a young man with mechanical legs. Seeing Qin looking at him, he smiled and said, "Hey, newcomer, are you ready?" The crowd around him immediately burst into laughter, as if they were all waiting to see a good show. This place, although so sci-fi and advanced, seems to have not changed the evil side of human nature. Qin frowned, but did not respond. He looked again at the young man who was surrounded by drones. Perhaps only he knew that the reason why the other party did not cry yesterday and cried today was because he, like himself, had just traveled from the greenhouse on Earth and was having a hard time accepting this reality. This was not a guess, but he had seen him. Qin was 17 years old and a second-year student at a foreign language school in Luo City. And this young man who was breaking down was a first-year student. The two of them had no intersection, but Qin had a good memory and found it hard to forget anyone he had seen. This made Qin a little surprised. Could it be that if the positions before the crossing were close, the positions after the crossing would also be close? He wasn't sure. However, Qin did find one thing: everyone here speaks Mandarin, and there is no one who speaks dialect. At this moment, the machine guard was rushing up the stairs, each step spanning 5 steps, accompanied by a unique hydraulic transmission sound. The young man was already crying inconsolably. Half of the people in this prison fortress are equipped with mechanical limbs. Meeting people from Earth in a place where steel beasts are lurking makes one feel like meeting an old friend in a foreign country. Ordinary people, when they meet fellow villagers in a strange place, will feel a sense of safety for no reason, but Qin didn't feel this. He looked at the young man who was on the verge of collapse and realized that fellow villagers may not be able to help you, but may become a burden. Not everyone can remain calm in the face of this unfamiliar mechanical civilization. What he needs to do now is to survive these first 2 days and then return to Earth to understand why all this is happening. Qin quietly observed in a low-key manner. For some reason, his mood was even more calm at this moment. Until now, all the prisoners were still standing still. He looked around the prison fortress. 9 robots that had just rushed from the gate of the prison area left 3 on the square below, and the rest went upstairs to take the panicking young man away. The square downstairs is very wide. It feels like the size of a football field. The open square is divided into several areas: dining area, fitness equipment, entertainment area, reading area, audiovisual area, etc. There are no partitions between these areas, like a large free activity area, and there are 8 large steel gates distributed around the square. The gates are so large that they can probably allow armored vehicles to pass directly. Suddenly Qin was stunned. He saw that 3 people had somehow appeared next to the dining table downstairs. A middle-aged man in his 40s was sitting, and 2 young men were standing by his side, looking up at the prisoners upstairs with interest. There was a chessboard in front of the middle-aged man, and there was a game on the chessboard. What was most surprising was that next to the chessboard on the dining table, there was a cat lying down with its claws curled up, gray in color, with 2 tufts of pointed hair on its ears, looking a bit like a lynx, but not the main cat. Can you keep a cat in prison? Qin was a bit surprised. He had been attracted by his fellow villagers just now, so he didn't see when these 3 people and a cat came to the square. At this moment, the middle-aged man was still staring at the chessboard as if nothing had happened upstairs, and what surprised Qin the most was that even the robots on the square seemed to ignore these 3 people and a cat. The seriousness upstairs and the ease downstairs are in stark contrast. Like 2 different worlds. Among these 3 people, 2 young men were wearing normal blue and white prison uniforms, while the middle-aged man was wearing a white practice uniform. In this gray and oppressive environment, that white is extremely refined. Qin was secretly thinking, could this be the prison warden? No. Although the other party was wearing a practice suit different from other prisoners, there was a small black prison number embroidered on the chest of the practice suit. This middle-aged man is also a serving prisoner in the prison, but the most special one. As if feeling his gaze, one of the young men beside the middle-aged man suddenly turned his head and looked back at him with a smile. Qin immediately withdrew. After the panicking young Earth boy was taken away, a broadcast sounded again in the prison fortress: proceed to the dining hall for meals in order of queue. As soon as the voice fell, Qin saw all the prisoners turn right, then line up in a long line, and proceed to the square along the stairs. It was not until this time that Qin had the opportunity to count the number of all prisoners, including him: 3102. There are 7 floors in this prison fortress. Each floor of prisoners forms a team, led by the prisoners at the front of the team, orderly to the dining hall. During this period, no one jumped in line, and no one left the team. Ching felt that everyone here seemed to be operating according to a predetermined program, as if everything had been restrained. This order did not end until everyone had finished their meals from the robot window. It seems that you can move freely after you have finished your meals. Ching and his team live on the 5th floor, so by the time it was their turn to serve, the people on the 1st floor had already finished eating. He saw 2 burly prisoners dragging a young man directly to the nearest cell on the 1st floor, and many people were following them. Someone also instructed, "Hurry up and pull him into the cell, don't hurt him in the square, be careful of the machine." Prison guard intervening. The prisoner dragging the young man responded casually, "Don't worry, I'm not a fool like Yang Jia." At the same time, the young man was struggling and roaring, "Let go of me." But just as he was about to be pulled into the cell, the young man's voice turned into a plea, "Please, spare me." However, no matter what he said, no one paid any attention to his request, but it attracted more laughter. Suddenly, the old man with a mechanical eye in front of him turned around and laughed, "Stop looking around, it's your turn soon." Ching looked at him calmly. The old man suddenly felt that the look in the boy's eyes seemed a bit different, and he didn't know why, but he suddenly felt a tightness in his heart after serving the food at the window. The formation was disorganized. Ching noticed that 3 people around him were subtly approaching him, as if they wanted to control him directly. He immediately sped up his pace, and the other party also sped up their pace, keeping him tightly surrounded. The next moment, the scene in this prison fortress seemed to slowly pass through Ching's mind. The 18 machine guns on the dome were waiting quietly, like sleeping tigers. The 72 drones were hanging in the gray alloy ceiling slots, like sleeping wasps. The 210 monitors were slowly turning their angles, and the 3 robots in the square were standing with guns. The prisoners were getting their food one by one from the window, and some people were complaining that it was the disgusting synthetic meat again today. Someone was washing dishes by the pool, and someone else was washing dishes for others. As more and more people finished their meals on the square, it became more lively. People were coming and going, some were going to the fitness area, and some were watching the new person ceremony, but everyone instinctively avoided the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man still listened to everything that was happening around him as if he hadn't heard anything. He looked seriously at the middle-aged man and said, "Pawn advances 1, I can solve this endgame." The middle-aged man only then looked up, and suddenly the square became quiet, and the cat also opened its eyes. Translate the above novel into English, requiring fluent language, in line with the reading habits of English native speakers.